Morning, everybody, and welcome to Forsters webinar, Hotels of the Future, the Impact of COVID-19 for 2021 and Beyond. I'm Andrew Parker, the hotel group leader and partner in the construction team. I think we can all agree that 2020 has been a year of unprecedented disruption for all of us on a personal level and in respect of our business. The hotel industry, with its dependency on business travel, tourism, and social interaction, has not escaped the impact. The discussion today will focus on what that impact looks like, which areas of the country have been hit hardest, which sectors, and why. We'll also be looking at the operation side of things and what the impact has meant to how our hotels are operated. Also, what about hotel valuations? How have they been impacted and the funding that goes with them? We'll also be looking to the future and looking at what hotels need to do to continue to thrive and whether any changes that it makes will have a permanent effect. And hotel development, new hotel developments coming on, will they now pause while the recovery takes effect? To discuss all these issues, we're very fortunate to have a superb panel of guests. We have Sam Ward, the leader of the hotel sector at PwC, Will Kirkpatrick, head of hotels at Gerald Eve, Melvin Gold of Melvin Gold Consulting Limited, and Henrik Muller, the general manager at Fleming's and executive board director of Small Luxury Hotels of the World. So just a quick piece of housekeeping. We've got a Q&A button, hopefully at the bottom of your screens. And as and when questions come to you, please do post some questions for us. There will be some time at the end and we will get through as many as we can. We've also got a quick poll. With the panel and our audience, we really have got the great and the good of the hotel industry with us this morning, and we thought it was a good opportunity to test the mood and see what we think the climate might hold for us in the future. So there is a poll coming up, which you'll get 20 seconds to answer 2 questions. Hopefully you can all see that. Those that have got apps should see it. If you've got a browser, I'm going to have to just give you the results. But the questions we've got are: when will RevPAR levels return to pre-COVID levels in London? And the same question: when will RevPAR levels return to pre-COVID levels in the regions? We've got never 2021, 2022, 2023, 2024, or later than that. So I can see some results coming in, and I will give it a little time to finish. Okay, so it looks like we have nobody saying never. That's good to see. We've got some optimists with us today. 2021, 3%. 2022, the biggest result, 38%. 2023, 33%. This is in London, by the way. 20% say 2024, and 7% say that RevPAR levels in London will take later than that. In the regions, we've got 1% never, 8% 2021. Again, 2022 is the winner in the regions, 34%. 2023, 33%. 2024, 14%. And 9% say later. So we have we've got some optimists in that we are going to return at some stage. It's just a question of when. And to help us with that question, Sam, if I can, I could kick off with you. And we had at the end of the month PwC's usual excellent annual report and forecast. a particularly brave enterprise this particular year. But we'd be really interested to hear your summary of the key impact of COVID-19 on the hotel industry.
Thank you, Andrew, and it's really good to see such an optimistic poll. I hope I don't dampen those spirits with what I'm about to say. So just as a quick summary, I mean, it goes without saying that, that this crisis has had a huge, significant impact on the hotel sector. And I think at the beginning of our webcast to launch our UK Hotel Forecast report, I mentioned that if you look at all of the downturns in the hotel market since benchmarking began and added all of those downturns together, then you still don't come to the full significant impact of this year's downturn in the market. So it's absolutely unprecedented. I don't normally use that word, but it really is an unprecedented event for the sector. You know, we all saw that from the beginning of from the end of March to the beginning of July, during the lockdown, the first lockdown, most hotels closed. Only those that were open were to house some key essential workers and displaced guests. When the hotels did reopen in July, it was the regional hotels that recovered quicker. So a lot of the regions did benefit from the UK staycation demand, whereas London remained far more sluggish, which really reflects the level and reliance of both corporate and international demand in the capital. During September, whilst the weekend leisure did remain strong in the regions, there was obviously no weekday corporate demand yet. And so as a result, you know, RevPAR did fall back down again. And now lockdown 2, we're seeing the consequences of that across the whole of the UK, with again, most hotels, as I've seen from emails, closing again temporarily. So what does that mean? Well, in terms of our UK hotel forecast for 2020, like I mentioned, we have anticipated a sharp drop in London RevPAR due to the dependence on business trips, meetings and events and international travel in the capital. So that's a reduction of £100 from last year down to £29. I thought I'd never hear myself say that. 78% less than last year. And in terms of forecast for next year, we have done an average of 2 scenarios, one that suggested that a vaccine would be available to roll out in Q1, and the second one that the vaccine would be available to roll out in Q3. So based upon an average of those 2 scenarios, we have anticipated that the capital, London, will rise by nearly £65 in 2021. But without a vaccine, it would rise to only just above 40. Whereas the regions, as I've mentioned, we do expect that they have benefited from the stronger UK staycation market. So we're anticipating RevPAR drop of 57% for this year to around £23. With a vaccine for next year, we're forecasting the regions to rise by 73% to nearly £40, but without a vaccine to only £34. So those were the results of our forecast. I should add that they were published before lockdown 2. However, given the weak demand that we had anticipated in Q4 of 2019, I don't think that should have a significant impact.
Thank you, Sam. Yeah, really quite a stark set of results. And as you say, unprecedented. I mean, Melvin, I mean, looking at those statistics and, you know, RevPAR levels, occupancy levels, how have you seen hotels coping with that? We heard from Sam that some were having to shut. You know, what options are open to hotels and what have you seen them taking?
I think, as you said, I mean, PwC have done a great job and incredibly brave in current circumstances. It really is. It's very difficult to forecast anything, and you know, as Sam said, since then, since the forecast, we've had lockdown 2, which came quite quickly, and I think there's two really important things at the moment. Hotels in general are not faring well, which is sort of obvious. I'm seeing more hotels that are deciding, helped by the extension of the furlough scheme through the winter until March, and the rates holiday that persists through that period as well. Some hotels starting to announce that they're not actually going to reopen through the winter, and we saw most prominently Gleneagles announced last week that they're not opening until the beginning of February. And there are certainly other examples. I had a look around. I think the other thing that's I would really pick out is this issue of the market segmentation of the sector, where we've started to see leisure, travel, domestic leisure travel through August, September, and so on. Weekends, Sam mentioned, as being really strong. But business travel, companies are reluctant, even if their people want to travel, companies are reluctant to sign off on anybody going anywhere. And international travel is obviously curtailed. Groups and tours and conferencing are somewhere at the tail end of that segmentation release. So I think those are the challenges, and I think there's also probably a demographic change as well. Once people start traveling again, younger people in general are more prepared to go for it than the older groups. Until the vaccine comes, and that's obviously a change since the PwC forecast. Yeah.
And Henrik, I mean, in terms of the operational side of hotels, what kind of changes have you seen that you've had to make, or that you've seen hotels having to make?
I mean, for us, for example, here in London, we have to adapt, of course. Literally, I always say every 5 minutes, because you switch on the TV in the morning and some news comes out and you have to reorganize everything. And it's for hotels, I think generally in the UK, very confusing, because the messages we get from the government are confusing and we're changing. And so operational for us is the same. You know, we have made redundancies, of course, I think like everybody else in London. We have people now on furlough still. We have a small crew which is running the hotel. So we are actually open. I have to say we are open, and we have a few guests, not many, but we are open. So we have to adapt literally by the day. We have to adapt every week, and we watch the news like you all do and see how we can operate. And of course, now we are all waiting for the news if we can reopen on the 2nd of December or not.
Yeah. And have the furlough schemes in their various iterations helped you avoid redundancies, or have they not been very helpful?
The furlough scheme was very helpful. What wasn't very helpful is that it was changed. It was a few times. We had a new one coming out in 1st of November, and then of course it was changed again. I think we should have had this like in Europe. The government should have announced it throughout until April, for example, 21. And I think if they would have done that, less hotels would have made less people redundant. If we from the beginning would have had a clear picture of what we should do and how we can work with furlough.
Yeah. And I mean, talking about staffing, it's an old age problem for the hotel industry. Pre-COVID, it was, how can we attract and enough people of talent to the industry? Now you've almost got the opposite, where you're losing people, and if those people are European, I think you've mentioned before, it's difficult to attract them back. What kind of challenges are you facing there, and how are you trying to address those?
I think, as you say correctly, huge challenges for us. Look, people who have left me or my competitor hotels, gone back to Europe, for example. They've gone back to Germany, Portugal, Romania, Bulgaria, and so on. If the business, and listen to Sam, of course, if the business comes back, we hopefully, of course, somewhere Q4 of next year, we need the staff back. And I think that will be a huge challenge for all of us. How can we get the staff back? Because most of the lower paid staff are back in Europe. For us, it will be a massive challenge to get those staff members back into the UK because of the new system set up from the 1st of January.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, Will, I mean, in terms of a tipping point with occupancy levels, I mean, and some hotels having to make the decision to temporarily close, you know, have you got a feel for where that tipping point is in hotels and what they're going to do over the Christmas period and when they might make a decision and how as to when to come back and open? It's an incredibly difficult one for them to manage, surely.
I think it's for everybody extremely difficult, you know, and for example, you know, I'm sitting with my owners and we're discussing this also on a weekly basis. What should we do? You know, should we close? Should we leave the hotel open? Are guests around? There's a few guests around, but look, we normally run the hotel over 90% occupancy in the year. Now we have 5-6%. And of course, I have a very small team. I personally believe hotels should stay open if you can, even in a small team, even if you have only 10 people, 15 people employed, because it's the spirit, you know. And I think if you close, and we have seen it now, hotels have closed and they reopen now, they're announcing again to close. I think it's not very good for the spirit of the staff. What I have seen here with keeping the hotel open and keeping a small team, the team spirit is incredible. You know, and yes, we do everything. I mean, we hoovering, we go through the hotel, we have floors, of course, out, and we have to put the water on, so everybody's helping, and I think that's fantastic. Also on the restaurant side, if you have a restaurant in the hotel, which, for example, had a good name, keep it open. Try at least to do delivery service. Try at least to have takeaway service. Many hotels in London have done that so far, and keeping those restaurants open.
Yeah, I mean, like all these things, it's not purely a financial problem to solve. There's a human element to it, and these are people's careers and livelihoods. And strong leadership and teamwork is incredibly important. Will, I think you were going to launch in, if am I right, that I don't know what you've seen in terms of tipping points in the market as to others that have taken a decision to close or reopen.
I mean, it's very, very different. We have some clients who run hotels down in Cornwall who have had record years. KPIs I'd never achieved before, and hotels like Henrik's, which in central London, which have again faced numbers that they've never seen before in their entire life. It is very, very difficult. I mean, it's interesting to note that Whitbread recently announced that for them to break even, they would need occupancy to be 55% and ADR to be discounted by approximately 20%, and that includes them paying off rent. Other hoteliers have reported back that, you know, if they can reach between 20 and 30% of occupancy, then they do start breaking even, but those numbers do vary a lot. So it is very, very hotel specific and depending on the mix. And you know, one key things that valuers are looking at now is the mix between, you know, UK, European and international guests. And never so much has that been a bigger issue than it is today.
Yeah. And I guess, as Henrik's been saying, that there's a value to keeping a team together and keeping things going even at a cost, I suppose, depending on hotel to hotel. And so with all this impact on the industry, you know, well, what can you tell us about how this is affecting valuations of hotels and funding in the market? Must be having a huge impact.
Absolutely. I don't think my job's been more complex than ever in 20 years. So yeah, you're absolutely right. It is very difficult in a minute to work out the extent of value shift. There are three key issues which are facing valuers at the minute. One is the lack of transactions, especially above £10 million. Two is ability to forecast trading projections in the light of vaccines, air travel, large gatherings, and Brexit. And then thirdly, lack of funding. For example, so in our valuations, we're adopting a build-up approach in our 5-year forecast in the DCF model. If one assumes a 2 to 4 year recovery, depending on the hotel, and say one moves the capitalization yield by only 25 to 50 bips, this can create a material drop in value, between 5 and 15% plus. However, for non-prime locations, we're seeing value shift by 10 to 25% plus. which is a challenge. However, one should note that unlike the GFC, there are a number of investors around with available cash, which does make valuations more complex. It is thought in Q1, Q2 of next year that reluctantly the banks will be forced to review the situation being 1 year post-COVID. And what will be interesting is a number of hoteliers who have been holding out to sell are seeking to bring to the market those hotels in Q1, Q2. So this could be an interesting time actually for hoteliers, investors and banks. On the second point on funding for new acquisitions, I'm afraid this is a short conversation. There is very limited funding available for existing borrowers with good bank relations. However, for new borrowers or borrowers with no strong banking relations, there is only a handful of lenders out there, such as Oak North and Octopus. My concern is the lack of debt is restricting acquisitions, and this could affect value once the market opens up, which could create a continuous loop. And one would expect this continuous loop to break when hotel values reach threshold values, where these opportunistic cash buyers start acquiring and come back into the market.
Yeah. I mean, is that a picture that spreads across London and the regions fairly consistently, or is there a difference?
Yeah, I mean, there is. I mean, those leisure hotels, you know, I always say the perfect hotel is probably a hotel down near Brighton, where you've got a business market, you've got a leisure market, and if you're select service or a service department or part hotel, I mean, those are the ideal hotels. Whilst these leisure hotels, i.e. the hotels I just mentioned down in Cornwall, have performed exceptionally well up to date, I mean, going forward is going to be quite challenging. And as Melvin rightly said, there are a lot of hoteliers are saying, well, you know, after lockdown 2, do I open up again? And actually, you know, one hotelier said to me yesterday, well, you know, why should I open up for December? Because December, I'll have maybe a mediocre month in December, but January and February is my week's time of the year. So why open up for 1 month when I don't know what's going to happen? So they're going to close their hotel to February and March.
And even in normal times, many hotels around the country lose money in January and February, and December without the Christmas trade. You know, in terms of corporate parties and taking on auntie and uncle out for tea and lunch and stuff, looks a bit like January. If you take away the Christmas markets and, you know, some of the other demand drivers in that period. So it is quite a calculation that hoteliers are gonna have to make. And if their staff are looked after by the furlough scheme, I think that tips the balance in quite a few cases.
Mm. Mm.
But I think it comes back to Henry's point. He made a very good point there that hotels, if you can reduce down your staffing levels to, let's say, key staff, I-10 staff, and remain open, I mean, there is a big ability there. One hotelier we're speaking to in Manchester has done that. And certainly that's helped his corporate accounts. So he's had one, you know, some very, very strong feedback on that. So there is that kind of guest loyalty as well.
Yeah. And these problems that are facing the hotel industry, I mean, are they, how specific are they to hotels compared with some of the traditional competitors to the market? I mean, Melvin, the Airbnbs and service apartments and hostels of the world, do they have business models that are in some way partly immune to the problems that the hotel industry is facing, or are they in the same boat?
I think service departments, which have been something of a flavour of the month for a couple of years now, certainly in London and around other parts of Europe, have fared pretty well related to the rest of the hotel sector, because they offer a sort of self-contained environment with a little kitchen and stuff like that. I think Henrik's got some apartments. He might be able to give us the benefit of that experience. I think, you know, on the other hand, you know, hostels, multi-room hostels seem, you know, a bad idea even for the younger generation that are relatively unaffected by this. Airbnb is quite an interesting one. I think it just lacks the branding on an individual unit basis, and so some people may get very comfortable with some units that are where the owners are offering particular assurances in terms of cleaning regimes and so on, whereas others may not be. I think actually I noticed that Airbnb have launched an IPO this morning, or filed papers for an IPO this morning, which is quite interesting sort of timing. But I think the quality assurances of the traditional hotel and the traditional hotel brand, so to speak, will provide greater assurance to a consistent range of customers than Airbnb, but certainly service departments seem to have come out of this pretty well. You've got some apartments, haven't you, Henry?
Yes, we have apartments, and they are going quite well. I mean, we only have 10, I have to say that, but they're going quite well, especially before, when people came into quarantine and used them 2 weeks to quarantine. But Airbnb, I have heard in London, of course, or I look in London, a lot of Airbnbs are at the moment advertising, but I firmly believe we in hotels have a better chance to attract those customers now, because we have put in place cleaning schedules. We have a COVID clean environment, and have a better chance to attract those customers with our new procedures.
Yeah, you can certainly see that a brand or a well-known sort of name gives people a sort of a peace of mind and a confidence that the Airbnb doesn't necessarily.
Because would you go to an apartment today and you get the key, you open it up, you don't know if what has been cleaned, you don't know what's going on, who was there before. So if you go to a hotel, you still believe, you come in, you have your check-in, you have your guidance. I think it's a much better environment in this crisis.
Yeah.
I think I was just going to add on the service departments as well. I guess it depends the extent to which those particular apartments were reliant on corporate demand. So, definitely for those service department operators that were hugely reliant on the corporate demand, I think, they may have found it difficult to have switched to marketing towards the leisure demand, which is in the only demand available really so far. So it's really those that have been more agile in terms of their methods of distribution and marketing to new guest bases that I think have been the most successful.
Yeah,
I think
there's been some. Sorry, Will. I think there's been some corporate around, in terms of people that just got caught into a different location or needed to be somewhere, and a traditional hotel wasn't ideal. But yeah, of course, as we've already agreed, leisure is predominant and has been predominant for quite a few months now.
I think one other thing we've seen as well is a number of service department operators, certainly following on to Samantha's comments about Central London, is some of them actually now started letting out some of the apartments on ASTs. So they've been looking at their portfolio and actually splitting some out to ASTs and some onto service departments. So that's another trend that we're seeing, that service departments have got that ability to kind of mix between ASTs and service department. Obviously, if there's any planning consultants on here, we'll just cover our ears with that comment.
Yeah. Sam, let's turn to recovery. What do you see as the factors that might influence the speed and effectiveness of any recovery?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I guess, as I think we've mentioned before, any recovery so far really has been in the domestic leisure demand. So, those hotels that have benefited first are those that you're able to access, really by road, by rail, especially as we've mentioned, the kind of self-catering, small format, self-sufficient hotels and apartments. I think there will be, obviously, until there is a vaccine and there is confidence for travellers to travel internationally, then that's going to be a lot slower. So definitely those beach and city locations that do rely upon international travel will see a much slower level of recovery, and the larger format hotels as well. I think the larger difficulty is really we're foreseeing a potential long-term and even permanent structural shift, just in terms of the way that corporates may travel and conference and events markets. So definitely, those particular parts of the sector may be most affected and slowest to return.
Yeah. And where do you think the opportunities lie, Melvin? I mean, there's some evolution going to be needed. I mean, in terms of the events and conferences, I don't know if you caught on the weekend, there was a Sky News article about the Royal Lancaster that has got a new multi-screen, which is their way of trying to make use of space. I mean, are there weird and wonderful ways in which hotels are going to be using their space now more effectively?
I did see that actually on Sky. I thought it was a really good piece. I mean, the piece was fundamentally about how difficult it is for the hotel sector as a whole, but the Royal Lancaster, I think the Lancaster London now is their name. That conference suite with interactive tech and so on is very futuristic. Costs a lot of money. It's not for everyone, but it will do well. But it still assumes that some level of people are going to be in that room, and other people are going to be around the world. And we have to get to a point when people are comfortable and confident in traveling to events. And when you go to events, networking is absolutely key. It's often it's the reason why most of us go to conferences and exhibitions and the like, even more than the actual content. And I think that's the real challenge. And companies have to let their be prepared to let their people off the leash and put them at risk. So I think we're still vaccine dependent, and I think that event space, despite the ambitions and investment of the Lancaster, which is really impressive. It's worth seeing that broadcast if people can. It's still a lagging segment of the market at the moment. Someone was talking to me yesterday about the Berlin Hotel Conference, which we've all been to, which is normally in March, and I just personally can't really imagine that for the time being, but we will see. But Zoom doesn't really do it. It doesn't create the networking opportunities and the like. But the technology is way ahead of where it was. Say after 9/11, when everyone thought video tech would take over the world and didn't make any inroads at all. I think now it has.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of other use of space, I mean, I'd heard about ideas of people using their large spaces for offices or temporary offices, or touchdown space for meetings. I was speaking to my partner in the planning team, Vicky DeCrow, and she was saying that actually the planning changes that came in September, which allowed for standalone leisure and gyms and to be changed into office and retail, hasn't happened for the hotel sector. So those anybody wanting to make those changes still needs to make a planning application, which is a frustration and no doubt a bit of a barrier to that sort of interim temporary approach.
I think, given the optimism of the the group that's watching this in the vote at the beginning of this, where they're seeing a recovery by 2022, which is, personally I still think is quite ambitious, given potential recession and unemployment and lots of other sort of bad things. But I think to permanently move space into a different use is probably not on most people's agendas. It takes an awful lot of money. I think Will's better placed to talk about that than I am. But I'm just not sure that I think people are going to permanently deploy space. But if we are, for the next 9 months, in a period where social distancing is paramount, vaccine is not widely distributed till towards the end of that period, then I can easily see that people will use might deploy a conference suite or something as part of their restaurant to allow more people in more space. for the time being. But permanent deployment into offices or some other use, you know, I think that would have only come if we didn't have the vaccine, you know, and the cavalry riding to the rescue on the horizon.
Yeah. Will, is that how you see the development space? I mean, is that what you're hearing? So people are reluctant to make those changes?
Yeah, again, it's two extremes we're seeing at the minute. For prime assets, you know, most developers are saying to us, well, it will take 2 to 3 years for us to take the hotel from our conception point at the minute to PC. By that point, especially in London, we expect London hotel KPIs to recover by that point. So certainly in London, we are seeing developers and investors going ahead, and actually we've been quite busy in that area, regardless of COVID, which is quite bizarre. However, you know, for non-prime locations or even locations which are prime locations but with significant pipeline development supply, so that's places like Glasgow, we are definitely seeing, you know, developers standing back and looking and reviewing, which I think is sensible actually, especially in places like Glasgow with such amount of supply coming in. I think one of the interesting things is also ground rents, and I know it's quite a contentious point, but we are seeing, you know, fund managers such as LaSalle and CBRE GI, they've been particularly active in the ground rent market, and a lot of that's been with developments as well, with ground rents ranging from 10% to 15% of NOI. So, I mean, that's a structural change as well. And then we've also seen people like CBRE GI doing fat ground rents as well. So I think the market is, fat rents, to define that, is ground rents of roughly about 20 to 30% of NOI. So we are seeing structural changes in the market. And with those ground rents, that's propping up some of these development pipelines. Yeah.
I mean, certainly from a construction perspective that I've seen, you know, those developments that are ongoing, you know, they're continuing, and the best thing for everybody concerned is to finish those. And there's been a diktat from on high to encourage parties to construction projects to not use COVID as an opportunity for disputes and to stall construction. So there's been quite a bit of collaboration on construction projects, at least until the end. I mean, we'll see what happens. There may be storing problems for later down the line, but projects have taken longer or are taking longer, and they're probably costing more. But a typical market approach that we've seen parties taking is that, you know, the contractor gets extra time, but doesn't get any extra money for COVID, at least in an interim level, at the interim point. And then when the hotel is built, when the development is built, we then see where things are. And I think that's also happening for ones that are planned. But it's interesting to hear what you say about the pipeline looking forward. But I mean, going back, you know, Henrik, you might want to, we touched on branding before, and you know, maybe this is becoming now an even more important aspect of survival going forward. I mean, you might imagine that in times like this, you know, it's the survival of the fittest, and those hotels that were on their way out because of reasons unrelated to COVID, you know, just bad business models, this might be, like a lot of things, an accelerator for those hotels. Do you see a consolidation of the market and a move towards branding?
Branding for sure, but branding also, look, I'm on the board of Small Luxury Hotels of the World, and we have seen, surprisingly, a lot of hotels applications who have been freestanding before and feel now they need a brand to represent them. During this crisis, especially last 4 weeks, we have never seen so many requests coming in. Brands, yes, are important, but also I think the individual hotels will be still extremely important. You know, not everybody wants to stay in a Marriott, not everybody wants to stay in an Intercontinental or Hilton. I think there are two sides to it. Personally, I believe once we know what's going on with the vaccination and when business is coming back, I think it will go back to more or less to the old times.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think at an operational level, you're having to make a number of changes. You said that there's staffing. I mean, are there any other things that you think hotels are having to do? And will those changes that you're making become permanent?
For sure. Look, we have done a lot of changes, and especially now with a small team, everybody has to be very polyvalent, you know. So I kept, for example, my golden key concierge, but, you know, and they have to do check-in and check-out now. And I believe when we reopen, properly reopen, these things will continue. You know, will the concierge in my hotel have their own desk? At the moment, I don't believe so. Maybe when we are back to the old figures of 80–90% occupancy, we can talk about this. But and that, of course, is a question mark when we will reach them. Many people are very positive and saying it could be 21. I'm a bit more pessimistic on this because I look at the picture of Europe, for example, or the countries where I get my business from, US and Europe, Russia, China, Brazil. And those countries are not yet advanced as we are talking about vaccine. It will take a very long time, I believe, 2–3 years until we see these levels coming back to London as we've seen in 2019.
Yeah. Well, we've had a number of questions coming in. I'm just looking at the time, and I want to give some chance to answer some of these things. So I might just fire some questions at you, if that's all right, panelists. We've got one here that says, most forecasts suggest very high unemployment among young people in the UK following the pandemic. Would the panelists comment on whether that pool of people would alleviate the anticipated staff shortages caused by Brexit? Who fancies taking that one? Henry?
Could be, yeah, could be. I mean, interesting one. We're looking for a head housekeeper. Yes, we're employing somebody at the moment. So we're looking for a head housekeeper. And I have never seen so many CVs of British applicants for this kind of position. So yes, maybe it will change, and maybe we have to work very hard in our industry, I believe, to show that we are a great industry to work in. You know, we still have this kind of bad image, you know, I call it the Gordon Ramsay image, which I don't particularly very much like, the swearing in the kitchen and so on. But I think a huge opportunity for us as hotels to go out to the schools, to go out to the universities and try to get employment when we reopen.
Yeah.
I think there's a point as well, if you look at the last recession, where the levels of unemployment were not necessarily where hoteliers were looking for staff, if that makes sense. So what you're asking is those young people to move from their existing location to where the jobs are. And I think that's one issue that we did face last time around. So it will be interesting to see what happens this time.
We've got another question here. Will hotels be a less attractive asset class in the future? What will be the long-term impact?
I'll take that. Well, I'll start the ball rolling on it. I actually believe fundamentally people want to travel. I actually firmly believe in the future of the tourism industry and the hotel industry. And I'm not sure when we'll be fully through this. I think 2022 is still quite ambitious, but I do believe that people want to travel. We are social beings, and life will resume a normal, whatever normal is, course at some point. And consequently, I think hotels will still be a solid asset class. What I do think is that some hotels will. There's been a lot talked about of this pandemic speeding up industry cycles. One of the industry cycles that was prevalent in the hotel sector was smaller independent hotels closing in favor of brands. So there's still quite a hefty hotel pipeline out there, hard to fund, and all the things that have been said. But I think some smaller hotels will close. And I think the future of the industry in the UK and probably other parts of Europe will be more towards larger hotels where they're better able to deal with the future needs of the traveller. That doesn't mean that the boutique sector and the small, beautiful hotel sector that Henrik's in won't work, but it does mean that hotels that have failed to invest and have still got carpets from the 1970s and so on will survive. They won't survive, and the industry will change shape. But I'm fundamentally optimistic about the future of the hotel sector beyond the next few years.
I support Melvin. I think one key thing people need to remember is before COVID hit us, the hotel sector was performing incredibly well. If you look at the fundamentals of our business, we've seen people coming into the UK increase by over 30% over the last 10 years. We're seeing countries like India, China, and so on, where more middle class people are being created and wanting to travel. We're seeing the next generation wanting to be, Instagram, want to take pictures of where they've been. So I'm strongly a believer that actually coming through this, actually the hotel sector will come out stronger than it went in.
I offer a slightly contrary view. I do agree with Melvin that, the human race is inherently exploratory. So in terms of leisure international travel, I absolutely believe, there will be a return. Obviously, it's going to be a slow return because those travellers are going to have the confidence to be able to travel. And I know that there's huge publicity that the vaccine is a hallelujah moment, and I'm really hoping it is, but it's going to take a long while for it to be rolled out to the extent that we need it to be, to allow those international travellers to travel and for the restrictions to be let go, so that they are actually able to travel from A to B. However, a lot of international travel pre-COVID was corporate, and I do think there are a number of factors in the corporate world, not just COVID, but other factors as well that will affect the future in terms of international corporate travel. Not least ESG. I think it was a growing factor for a lot of corporates, making sure that there was a reason for travel, and that was pre-COVID. And I think what's happened with the crisis is that's just accelerated that trend. Now that corporates are able to see that digitally they can actually replace a lot of that international travel, obviously with a far better carbon neutral result. So I do think that there will be a potential issue in that corporate international travel will not necessarily return to the same levels. So really, it's a case of hotels adapting because of that potential long-term trend.
That's interesting. I mean, we've actually got a couple of questions that are on point to these things, and one that will test some of these theories possibly. There's a question here. I want to sell my 250 key 3-star London hotel. Will the price be better now or in 2021 or 2022?
One from Melvin.
Definitely you will.
Thank you, James, for that question. Ironically, actually, well, let's just take you through this systematically. First of all, question number one is it a trophy asset? So if it's a trophy asset, we're advising on 2 hotel transactions in central London at the minute. Both have been bought off cash. And one I can't talk about it in terms of detail, but you wouldn't believe the cap rate that's been paid on that. So if it's a trophy asset, there is still buyers there today. My viewpoint is probably 2021, 22. But if it's a trophy asset, if the asset is needing refurbishment or repositioning, then I think 2022 is most likely, unless you want to do redevelopment. But it varies a lot. But there is still some cash buyers out there, and certainly foreign buyers. The words people keep telling to me, it's an uncluttered market, and therefore, if you want to try and buy something, now's the time to do it, because there's less people in there to disturb that process.
But will the hotel be worth more now or later?
Later.
I think we're definitely seeing, you know, a lot more new investors definitely reaching out to the sector as a whole, and they are looking for opportunities in the sector. I think the concern, though, is that their view is that it's going to be distressed opportunities. So I think, you know, currently a lot of the investors are potentially looking for a discount to longer term value and potentially opportunistic returns. However, you know, if there is capital that has a much longer term view, then especially for a London asset, if it's a freehold site, then you know, as long as you're able to tap into that longer term capital, then you know, normally London sustains its value if they're able to look at that longer term view.
Isn't part of the issue here the role or attitude of the banks, who are being incredibly patient? Will talked about it a little bit before, but they're being incredibly patient, partly because why would you push anyone to the wall if it means that you're not going to get any money back? And who you know, who are the mass buyers in such a market? But progressively, you know, I think the role of the banks in terms of any new debt and their role with existing hotels is going to cover the whole piece, really, and affect all of the valuation, because what you've both said is is that the people that are out there are either cash buyers or people with a very long-term horizon. The typical hotel buyer that's been in the market over the last few years, where they've come in and bought and been out again in, you know, 4 or 5 years, sometimes even less. That's you know, leveraged up with some debt. That's much more tricky play, I think, in the current market. I don't know if you both agree with that, but
yeah, I'd probably go one step further than that, Melvin. I think those sort of buyers, there isn't a market there at the minute. I think if you're a short-term buyer, getting debt at the minute is particularly difficult. And as Samantha rightly says, there is a huge gap between buyers' expectation and vendors' expectations. So for those short-term plays, those buyers are not really in the market, I don't think, unless there's somebody's been pushed to sell. But I think a point as well worth mentioning as well is, unlike the GFC, this time round, a lot of the banks are better secured. So the loan-to-value ratios are much more secure. So this time round, there won't be the same pressure. But you're absolutely right. The banks have been very patient to date, and I'll be interested to see what happens.
Okay, there's plenty of questions coming in, so we're not going to be able to do justice to all of them, I'm afraid. But there's one here. Historically, in times of recession or downturns in the hotel industry, leases have a greater attraction to investors. Does the panel think this will happen, even allowing for operators' reluctance to expose their balance sheets?
It's a difficult one, this. So I started off my career advising Whitbread, and have been working alongside Whitbread for 19 years. So, and during COVID, we've been acting for a number of landlords in terms of discussions with leases and so on. There are obviously lots of discussions at the minute, you know, whether the existing lease model works and whether turnover provisions are the way forward. I don't think there's one size that fits all. I think there is, you know, still a reluctance from some operators, you know, with the exception of obviously the service department sector and the part hotel market. You know, so the part hotel market, there is a new number of operators out there willing to take leases, and life continues not quite as normal, but there's still very strong demand there. Whereas I think, you know, on the budget side, i.e. Premier and Travelodge, and Motel One and so on, you know, they're incredibly selective now, and rightly so, having regard to everything that's happened. So I apologize for giving you a politician's answer. It is very, very, I mean, the one thing I would say is to people to be just slightly careful that turnover leases are not quite everything they're made out to be. And one needs to make sure you get those numbers correctly. Otherwise, we could end up, you know, because the issue is for for valuers when it comes to fund valuations. The turnover element isn't valued at the same yield as a guaranteed income, obviously. And therefore, you as a hotelier are paying rent that isn't being capitalised at a much lower rate. So one just needs to be slightly careful of that to get that balance right. Otherwise, my concern is that hoteliers will end up paying more rent and the investors get less cap val out of it. So therefore, it's not quite the margin everyone thinks it's going to be, but it's very, very specific to a location.
And there are also issues of covenant strength. I mean, are there that many people around that have got enough covenant strength and balance sheet or cash behind them to really persuade someone to offer a lease?
Yeah, I mean, the Gerald Leaf House rule has always been, one must always look at the VP value. So even during the good years, we were always telling investors, look, you must look at the VP value. And you've hit the nail on the head, Melvin, is a lot of people were ignoring that during the good years. And the disconnect between the investment value and the VP value was too great in some cases. So, recently we've picked up a number of problem cases where, in a secondary city, the gap between the investment value and the VP value has been colossal, and now it's starting to hurt quite a lot. Yeah, I think going forward, I think that's one thing people will learn from this experience.
Probably got time for one more. There's a couple on this subject, so I'll just take one of them, but there's a few on the same kind of theme. Are hotels generally considering remote working or workstation as an important market over the next 12 months? And another one was relating to flexible working office. Will that have an impact on? We've kind of talked around this subject, but Samantha, Sam, do you want to?
Yeah, so I mean, we've already seen, quite a lot of marketing from hotel groups where they are offering space, normally rooms, as daytime flexi office space. So it's somewhere local to where everybody is working from home. It provides a safe alternative to actually just sitting in the same room that we're all doing day in, day out. So there's definitely been, a marketing drive. I guess the question is whether hoteliers are looking to actually repurpose any space specifically for flexi office. I think it's too early to tell, but I guess it depends how corporate demand pans out as to whether there are some hotels with significant amounts of space that may be redundant, and therefore they may have to repurpose that space. And definitely, from a lot of the reports that PwC have produced and others, there is a tendency for corporates to be looking at their large offices now in certain locations and whether they're ever going to get back to full capacity again, and whether they need to provide to their workers a more flexi office, more local environment for them to be able to work in occasionally as an alternative to home. So there could be a meeting of those two sectors where offices aren't providing the space required of workers in the future, and maybe hotels can provide. But how that pans out, I think, is a bit of a longer term view and remains to be seen.
Fundamentally, the hotel business remains about the selling of bedrooms and restaurant space and conferencing. And any repurposing short-term cash flow to take advantage of other markets is a short-term expedient that hoteliers will sort of do anything to get cash in. But actually, you don't really want people longer term in your hotel rooms so that the room's got to be cleaned at 5 or 6 o'clock in the afternoon, ready for an overnight guest coming in. You'd much rather sell it for the full whack for overnight guests and so on and so forth. Nonetheless, the open lobby concept, coffee shop type thing with people opening their laptops and working in a very social environment was here before and will come back and will be here to stay. But I'm not sure the long-term use of hotel rooms as offices is really something that most hoteliers are about.
Well, we've just clicked on to 10 o'clock, so I think we should call it a morning there. But can I say thank you very much to the panel of guests this morning. It's been a really interesting discussion, and I think the participation from the audience shows that whilst we've got an industry which has been hit very hard and is suffering, we've also got an industry that will work collaboratively and share knowledge and ideas to see their way through it. And I think that gives us genuine hope for the future. So thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday and see you soon.